There is a place that is spoken about only in whispers, a dark area that spawns the beginnings of urban legends, a place where anything can happen and usually does. During the light of day, it hides just outside of view, but when the sun goes down, spirits, creatures of the night, roam free, and things do go bump in the night. It is in every state and every country, and there is no escaping it, no matter how safe you feel behind your locked doors and latched windows. So we invite you to turn down the lights and turn up your radio while we join Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis, your hosts, on a journey into the darkness on the edge of town.
Hello and welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. That guy right there, that's Tim Dennis. And we've got some cool stuff to talk about. We've got a lot of neat news stories from around the world. We've got some of your stories that you've emailed in. You can also call our Voices from Beyond voicemail at 651-300-4977. Share your stories of supernatural encounters with us, whether they're funny, scary, heartwarming, weird, just plain bizarre. We want to know your stories. 651-300-4977. Listen, Blumhouse has put out some of the best horror movies ever. I think that's fair to say, wouldn't you?
Oh, sure, yeah.
And they've got this Welcome to the Blumhouse series of movies that they're releasing on Amazon Prime. And Tim and I both got to take a look at a premiere of two new movies. I watched one, he watched the other, so that we could give a gentle review of the movies that are coming out. You can catch them on Amazon. I saw the movie The Lie. Tim watched the movie The Black Box. We're going to be watching movies again next Monday, and keep watching our social media because we're going to post a way for you to join us in the virtual premiere where you get to watch the movie from home and watch it with us on your computer and be a part of a live chat that goes on during the movie. And then there is an escape room murder mystery that takes place afterwards that you get to be a part of all for free as well. So if you're interested in being a part of that, then keep watching our Facebook and social media pages, and you'll see how you can enter to be a part of the next screening, which takes place next week on Monday, I believe. And those movies are Nocturne and The Evil Eye. But I will tell you this, there is another movie coming out from Blumhouse called Freaky with Vince Vaughn.
Yep.
That is coming out a little later on. That looks good to me. It's a weird take on the Freaky Friday premise.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah. Yep.
A teenage girl swaps bodies with the serial killer played by Vince Vaughn. So you get some hilarity, some spooky, and weird stuff. And how they kind of are able to fix that. So you want to check that movie out. I will tell you, the movie The Lie to me feels like Blumhouse has kind of set their eyes on taking beloved Disney movies, Tim, and turning them on their ear. I'm not going to tell you which movie because I think it'll give away a twist, but this definitely has the vibe, and I wasn't the only one to mention it during the end of the movie in the live chat. The Lie is Joey King, who is in the Conjuring movie.
Okay.
She is back. She is a teenage girl. And it has a really interesting story. I believe Peter Skarsgård plays her father, and the actress's name is eluding me that plays the mother. But it puts you into this really weird mode of what if your child committed a crime in a moment of passion. Passion always sounds like sex, but like in a heated moment, committed a crime that could influence the rest of her life. How do you respond to that? What do you do? And that's what this story explains. And it's fascinating, dark, bizarre, well acted. I liked it a lot. I would say out of 5 stars, 1 being crap, 5 being the greatest movie I've ever seen, I would give this a solid 4 stars for entertainment, for suspense, for good acting, everything. I just feel it really kind of fits this mold. It's got surprising, I don't even want to call them twist endings, but it's got some surprises along the way that really are fun and interesting to see develop. So check it out. It's called The Lie, and it's part of Blumhouse Presents. The Blumhouse, with all of these great little movies they're releasing, especially now here in October. We're in the heat of the season. So you got a chance to watch The Black Box.
Yeah, Black Box. It comes out from the some of the producers of Get Out. In a more unknown cast, but Felicia Rashad is in it, and Felicia Rashad plays a doctor who specializes as a brain doctor who, for lack of a better term, you have a character named Nolan, who Nolan survives for lack of a better term, a lethal car accident, which is his wife does not survive. He actually is brain dead for a short amount of time in this accident. And his daughter survives. No, his daughter is around the age of 9. And at the beginning of the film, the daughter is actually helping him remember because he's lost his long-term and short-term memory. He basically, imagine if you will, being led around by your daughter. Your daughter is cooking your meals for you. Your daughter is reminding you everything from, for example, your boss, how long you've known your boss, what your boss's name is, and to remember to smile when you drop her off for school, and what her teacher's name is. And every single function, your daughter is reminding you to do all these things. Kind of a scary scenario. He's basically a blank slate. And he's trying to remember, at this point, he's a photographer. He's trying to get his job back. He's basically lost his skills as a photographer as well. He's frustrated. He's behind in his bills. And this Dr. Brooks, I believe, is Felicia Rashad's character's name, has an experimental treatment with this thing called the black box, which will allow him to reach back into his memories and remember who he is. It's very experimental, but she's been able to take patients who were brain dead at one time and be able to reach back into their subconscious and pull these memories forward and be able to remember who they are. So Nolan resists the treatment at first. He doesn't know whether he wants to do this or not. And Nolan has a friend named Gary, a best friend, who is close with his daughter, Ava. And Ava considers Gary like an uncle. And Gary is encouraging Nolan to do this treatment. He doesn't know whether he wants to or not, but it's only when Nolan's up against the wall and really is frustrated with his situation. He's not going to be hired back as a photographer at the job, and he's behind in his bills, that he's up against the wall and goes to Dr. Brooks to get this treatment, this black box treatment, to really figure out who he is and bring these memories back. Well, as he uses the black box treatment, he figures out that there's something within his mind that's real. And it's a real monster, a real demon within his mind and within the black box that's haunting him. So it's kind of a technology, and it's right up my alley because you know how much I hate technology. So it was creepy. It was a real creepy thriller. And Felicia Rashad, I'll tell you, is amazing in this movie as Dr. Brooks and shows amazing range. In fact, everyone in this movie is amazing. The only thing here, Dave, is that I had an issue with in this movie was that the plot to me was a little predictable when you get deeper into the movie. But with that said, I thought the range of the actors and the fact that they showed an amazing range was pretty impressive. With that, I'll give it a 4 out of 5. I was very, very impressed.
Cool.
Yeah.
Boy, they do pick winners, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
And they give opportunities to new, well, not new directors, but maybe directors that you hadn't heard of before.
Yeah.
To really develop a story. And they do some great work.
They do.
Very cool.
Yeah. The acting, the directing, everything was very much, even though this one for me was a little easy to follow and I kind of knew where it was going, I was still excited to see the twists and turns that it took. So I was very impressed with everything.
Black Box and The Lie, you heard it here, 4 out of 5 stars for both movies from Tim and Dave. So go check that out. And next week we will review Nocturne and The Evil Eye. And I saw a preview for The Evil Eye when I was waiting to watch The Lie. And that's why I think I joined. That was what I wanted to focus on. It looks really compelling. And again, I don't recognize anybody in the cast. I find that exciting. Sometimes when you see major celebrities, to me, it takes you out of the element because it's just Brad Pitt playing this character or Benedict Cumberbatch playing, a character, and you're not in it as much as when you watch a movie with the relatively unknown people, or at least unknown people here. So interesting. Very cool. Well, we've got some news to deliver, Tim. We've got stories to deliver. First off, I've got to, because I'm a whore, I've got to really kind of put myself out there. Hit Travel Channel series, The Holzer Files, returns with more harrowing tales from the archives from America's first ghost hunter, of course, Hans Holzer. Season 2 premieres on Thursday, October 29th. Now, it starts off late for our premiere, 11 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, right after the special Halloween episode of Ghost Adventures, where they go to Joe Exotic's animal park to investigate claims of strange paranormal happenings. So that is our opening night on October 29th. So after a groundbreaking freshman run of the Holzer Files, we return with all new investigations into Hans Holzer's paranormal mysteries, launching again, like I said, with a special Halloween week premiere on Thursday, October 29th. Again, if you're not familiar with the show, it's a dedicated paranormal team led by paranormal investigator Dave Schrader. I know that guy. Psychic medium Cindy Kaza, Hubba Hubba, and equipment technician Shane Pittman, #poor Shane, as they revisit Hans Holzer's most captivating cases. With the help of Holzer's daughter, Alexandra, and researcher Gabe Roth, the team picks up where Holzer left off as we re-examine the terrifying hauntings that he dedicated his life to researching. The Holzer Files is a cryptic mystery bound by threads of truth, the voices of the past, and the exploration of modern paranormal pioneers. Viewers will experience a chilling chase fueled by Holzer's rediscovered archival files and haunting cinematography. The second season, comprised of 13, brand new 1-hour episodes, will follow our team on the trail of some legendary cases. From an elegant mansion in New York City, home to one of the world's most infamous hauntings, to the historic Maryland Tavern that hid John Wilkes Booth after he shot Abraham Lincoln. Recognized as the father of the paranormal, Hans Holzer's legendary 4-decade exploration into disturbing hauntings like the Amityville Horror House helped spawn legions of supernatural enthusiasts, more than 120 books, and even inspired Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis to write Ghostbusters. In each episode, the team culls through thousands of Holzer's recently discovered documents, letters, photographs, and chilling audio and visual recordings dating back to the 1950s. Using those findings, we then track down recent developments from each haunting and head back to the location to reinvestigate with a fresh perspective, harnessing our research skills and expertise. And I'm super psyched. I got to be honest with you. The first episode, Tim, is called The Phantom Hand.
Oh, okay.
This story is one of the coolest and most unusual stories ever. The Phantom Hand is going to take you back to 1963, when the Todd family of Cleveland encounters this ghostly hand reaching out toward them from the basement door in their Mason Court apartment. Now, they nailed this door shut. The appendage still pushed its way through, terrifying the family for weeks before they finally fled with their young son. Now, Tim, here's where it gets really bizarre.
Okay.
It wasn't just this family in this low-rent district that saw this phenomena. This story is famous because the police got involved. They came, saw it, and emptied a clip into the floor, shooting this hand. And then refused to go down and examine what they just shot at.
Really?
It's crazy. And This story, Tim, is going to really resonate with listeners of our show because it's got aspects of everything that we love and cover on this program. So this hidden case file finally reopened. New patterns do emerge on this case, and we're going to delve into original letters and an aspect of this haunting that may point to a new central crossroads for these spirits and the haunting past of this really infamous area and what may be tied to a serial killer, Tim. There were a couple of real holy beep moments for me during this, things I saw with my eyes that I was able to capture on video, experiences, audio. It's crazy. All I'll say is we were doing our interviews with some of the experiencers and historians. During one of the interviews, we start hearing phenomena take place. I don't know if it's going to make the episode because, again, we're out interviewing, but we would stop and you could hear something going on. It was crazy. So that's our season premiere. Then Tell Me No Lies premieres Thursday, November 5th. Hans believed a sensational tale of heartache and murder hid the real story behind one of his most famous cases. And we head to New York City's Old Merchant's House to uncover the terrifying truth of this Victorian age haunting. Death to Tyrants episode airs November 12th, where we're going to take you into history, Tim, where myself, Shane, and Cindy reopen a legendary case that looks at the terrifying haunting of the Surratt Tavern in Clinton, Maryland, which was an infamous first stop of John Wilkes Booth after assassinating Abraham Lincoln back in 1865. Final Word will premiere on Thursday, November 19th, where we go to Ohio's Franklin Castle. And he went there 3 times, each time experiencing really bizarre technical difficulties and never able to pinpoint the exact cause of what was happening and what was plaguing the owners of this house. Now the 3 of us return and we witness a troubled spirit manifest, Tim, that we captured on film.
Really?
And we do, I think, I was very proud of a moment in this episode because we do something which a lot of people will think at first is very controversial. We introduce a tool into our ghost hunting that will at first upset people, I believe. But I will tell you this, that I tried to do something with it that had never been done.
Okay. And
we got some interesting results. So, and I hope people will stay with it to see what happens and a new fresh take, I think, on what we're able to do. And I'm going to be real honest with you. This episode was very emotional for me. As one of the spirits we're investigating is a little girl who died of diabetes. And this happened, we were filming this episode at the anniversary of when I almost lost my own daughter a few years ago, when she had a massive diabetic fit and we almost lost her. So it was extremely emotional for me and one of my favorite episodes. And I think because of the emotion involved in this, and I involved one of my children in the investigation in a really interesting way. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be one of our best episodes. I'm really excited to see how people respond to it. Then on Thanksgiving night, Tim, Edge of the Veil, we're going to go to Rockland County, New York, the site of his first case, Hans Holzer's first case, and re-examine the stories and the paranormal activity that still seems to be pretty rampant. Is it a revolutionary past or something far more sinister? We're going to dig into that case. Blood in the Water premieres December 3rd. Hans Holzer heard of stories of paranormal activity taking place on Staten Island's historic conference house. And Tim, historic-wise, this was so exciting to be at and in. It's a site of a famous place for peace. Alexander Hamilton, I believe it was, Benjamin Franklin, and I'm sorry, I cannot remember the third gentleman's name, all went to this conference house to try to negotiate peace with England. And it was a turning point because they stood their ground. But there is something, that whole history is only 2 hours of the house's history, but there's something else taking place there. He investigated 2 times And there were reports of noises, murmurs, moans, and cries for help, terrifying man, woman, and child alike from this home. And Hans always felt there was more to this case. We go in and examine this case kind of with fresh eyes and a new discovery in history that we think gives some terrible truth to what actually took place there. The last one I'll mention as we dip into December 10th, The Devil in the Rock, where we venture to Massachusetts off the coast to follow up on Hans Holzer's 1964 investigation of the Bates ship chandlery. And we dive really deep into the property's past and uncover a really chilling undercurrent of darkness that is anchored on the rocky shores themselves. Very excited to be back and have the show. That's just the first batch of episodes to expect out of the 13 that we're going to be airing on Travel Channel. Begins again October 29th. I'm very proud of this season, guys. I think you're going to absolutely love it. We would love to hear from you once it hits, and let me know what you think of these episodes. All right, Tim, let's start off with some science news. How about that?
Sounds good.
All right. NASA is recruiting alien hunters to find signs of life in outer space, Tim. Maybe a side job for you. I don't know. The U.S. Space Agency, NASA, is recruiting volunteer alien hunters to spot new planets and pursue a common goal of understanding our universe. The U.S. Space Agency, NASA, is recruiting alien hunters to find signs of life in images taken from planets and other solar systems in outer space. They're seeking volunteers, though, Tim, from across the world. And NASA has launched a citizen science project called Planet Patrol to detect new planets from millions of images collected by its computer system. Since the 1990s, scientists have discovered more than 4,200 exoplanets, which, again, are worlds that orbit stars other than the Earth's sun. NASA wants to take advantage of interested people's time to examine the different extraterrestrial environments, some of which may host life. It's inviting volunteers to join the hunt for new exoplanets by examining images snapped by the Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite known as TESS, which has been orbiting the Earth since 2018. Planet Patrol will become a community pursuing the common goal of understanding the universe and our place in it. That's what NASA says. It launched Planet Patrol on Zooniverse earlier this week and has already recruited more than 1,600 participants who have collectively delivered 100,000 individual classifications. The program enables anyone with the internet connection to spot and classify likely exoplanets in images taken by TESS. Citizen science projects are a great way to engage our built-in never-ending curiosity about the world we live in, be it our own planet or a planet 100 light years away. NASA research scientist Veselin Kostov had to say. He said that the project launch was particularly welcome for people isolating during this COVID-19 pandemic. TESS is designed to spot exoplanets as they pass in front of the stars that they orbit, dimming the star's brightness. Once the exoplanet's existence has been confirmed, scientists can then start to determine the planet's basic properties and whether any type of life, including extraterrestrial intelligence, Tim, could find it habitable. The hundreds of thousands of pictures TESS takes each year are analyzed by automated software, but computers may accidentally detect an exoplanet when all the image shows is a dimming of light caused by a binary system containing two rather than one star, with one eclipsing the other. The most common imposters are eclipsing binary stars, Kostov said. Other false positives were caused by instruments or astrophysical noise distorting the TESS images. Kostov said the human eye was much more reliable than automated processing. I bet you like to hear that, Tim. Human element is much better than the AI that they hired to do this job originally.
Well, yeah.
Doom, 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 doom. Unless the AI is seeing it and covering it up so that the aliens can make it a subtle, quiet approach, Tim.
I bet
doom,
they
doom,
are.
Doom, doom, doom. Via the program's Zooniverse, Planet Patrol participants are guided through a process of evaluating the quality of TESS images. They then must distinguish between potential false positives and bona fide planet candidates. It's an extremely rewarding and enjoyable experience for us, and hopefully for them as well, says Kostov. My hope is that the project sparks a continuous interest in exoplanets in particular and in astrophysics in general. Another project NASA is undertaking is to detect whether alien life really exists on these exoplanets. And researchers have turned to looking for the shadows of one of Earth's most common multicellular life forms, trees. So you're going to be looking for trees on the planets. Professor Chris Doughty, lead author of the landmark new study, said in a statement, Earth has more than 3 trillion trees. Each one casts a shadow differently than inanimate objects. If you go outside at noon, almost all shadows will be from human objects or plants, or plants rather, and there would be very few shadows at this time of day if there wasn't multicellular life. The researchers suggest abundant, upright, photosynthetic multicellular life, such as trees that will cast shadows at high sun angles. This, the researchers believe, will probably distinguish them from singular cellular life. As a result, space telescopes will observe the types of shadows cast, which should theoretically determine whether they are similar life forms on exoplanets. Well, how do you sign up? How do you volunteer? How about this? I'm going to put that news article up on our website, darknessradio.com. Click on the news tab, find it there. There is a link that you can go to find out how you can sign up and be part of the Alien Hunters group, Tim, with NASA.
And then get kidnapped by AI.
Wow.
I'm just saying.
Go dark quick.
Well,
go dark quick.
Just saying.
I thought I knew, but I was wrong. As long as we're talking science, Tim, popular science has tackled the concept of why do we see ghosts?
Yeah, why do we see ghosts?
That's what popular science asks, Tim. Are ghouls real? Well, that depends. Current science can't prove that there are spirits walking through walls or screaming before floorboards or other spooky sightings. However, they have certainly felt real. Humans have been spotting specters for as long as we've been around, and to some degree we can explain why, according to popular science. These 7 mental and physical factors can account for almost any creepy occurrence. Almost, I think, is the key word in that sentence, Tim, including some famous ones ripe for debunking and help to make sense of your perpetual urge to sleep with the nightlight on. Okay, so this is the part of the show where we're going to poo-poo on the paranormal, Tim.
Okay.
And then I'm going to unleash the hounds of insanity with all the cool, crazy paranormal stories that have been witnessed this last week. All right. The first point is you want to believe. I know that ghosts have wandered on Earth, so says the tormented hero Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights, and he's not alone. Even for the most grounded among us, there's something irresistible about haunted houses and vengeful spirits, sometimes hoping for a spectral sighting, or, like Heathcliff, dreading one, is enough for us to conjure a wraith. Now, thanks to campfire tales and multi-million-dollar horror flicks, spooky notions can infiltrate our subconscious, even without any real-life supernatural encounters. Nearly half of Americans think ghosts are real, according to market research company YouGov. Although blood-sucking vampires, Tim, only scored a measly 13%.
Wow, that's it?
Yeah. That preconception primes our minds to run wild whenever we hear a creaky floorboard or feel a sudden chill. Believers are a lot more likely to report anomalous sensations, and they're also more likely to conclude that those sensations indicate a ghostly presence, said Chris French, head of the Anomalistic Psychology Research Unit at Goldsmiths University of London, as well as self-described wet blanket skeptic. We have such a tendency because the human mind is highly suggestible, French says. We've evolved to take cues from the outside world to escape threats like an animal chasing us, so a well-placed hint can make us see things that aren't there. In the 1990s, psychologists at the University of Illinois at Springfield gave the same tour of the century-old and long-closed Lincoln Square Theater to a group of people, telling only one cohort that they were investigating a haunting. Sure enough, the visitors who were informed of the excursion's specifics were far more likely to report intense emotions and strange occurrences. This mental quirk is so powerful that it can deceive us in real time. In another study conducted by Goldsmiths French, participants were much more likely to report witnessing a key bending of its own accord if someone standing next to them mentioned that they had seen an eerie incident happen too. Our preconceptions also cause us to find supernatural evidence in garbled noise or blurred images. That's the pareidolia, Tim. French says the phenomena, pareidolia, can explain many supposed recordings of phantom voices. If a ghost hunter or psychic instructs you to listen for a certain phrase, then your brain, which loves identifying patterns, tries hard to create those exact words from various bits of random sound. So there's the skeptic side of it, Tim.
Okay.
Another reason we believe in ghosts is we'd rather not risk it. It's easy to disregard the notion of paranormal activity in broad daylight, but everything changes when you head into that dark basement. Unfamiliar and threatening environments kick our survival instincts up a notch. If you're walking in the woods and you see movement, you can make two errors, said Michael Van Elk, a professor of social psychology at Leiden University. You can either think it's nothing, or it could be a potential predator. And it goes on to say, psychologists suspect humans evolved a cognitive bias towards the latter mistake for good reason. Our ancestors had to keep a constant lookout for stealthy hazards like leopards and snakes, and folks with a better safe than sorry attitude were more likely to survive and reproduce. But, Van Elk says, this propensity can cause us to sense the presence of another, even when we're alone. That's why a snapping twig can activate the fight or flight reflexes that make us scream. And that is my one problem I continue to have with The Walking Dead, Tim.
Okay. Is
they moan and they shamble. Mm-hmm. How does anybody get surprised in the woods by zombies at this point on that show? I mean, there are two now deaf characters. I can understand that.
Yeah.
But how do you not hear... Because even when the walkers or the living are walking, you can hear them crunching. I don't know.
Well, short explanation?
Please.
When you're in the woods, there is certain physical attributes to where you're standing that sometimes doesn't allow you to hear things sneaking up on you. And it has everything to do with air currents and the way that certain things are set up and even trees and the way that you're standing. So sometimes if you're standing in a wooded area, you don't necessarily hear things coming because you do have other things blocking you.
I don't know, dude. I am not an outdoorsman, and I can hear a deer fart from 40 miles away.
Well, then you have exceptional hearing.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Maybe it's because I'm in that fight or flight mode, so I can hear the of zombies. I'm not saying I have heard them, Tim. I'm just saying I could. I'm positive that given I would become the new Rick of this team, because I'd be like, you people need to use your ears. Pay attention. None of us should be getting bit in the wild, man.
Because there have been times where I've been out hunting and I've heard things I shouldn't hear, and then there's times where things have just snuck right on up to me, and you should be able to hear it clear as day, and you don't hear anything because you have the wind blowing, or you could have the wind blowing in your ears and you don't hear anything, and there's lots of things that can happen that can throw off why you don't hear something necessarily.
I'm with you. I hears you.
Yeah.
All right. The next theory, Tim, is you just need a little company. That's why some of us believe in ghosts. Mm-hmm. Because apparitions in movies like The Grudge and the Amityville Horror will stop at nothing to chase down their human victims. But ghosts aren't innately terrifying. Research suggests that the brain may summon spirits as a means of coping with trauma, especially the pain of losing a loved one, just as amputees report what's known as phantom limb syndrome, the feeling that their detached appendage is still there. Surviving spouses frequently report seeing or sensing their departed partner. One 1971 survey in the British Medical Journal found that close to half the widows in Wales and England had seen their mates post-mortem. These vivid encounters, which psychologists call after-death communication, have long been among the most common kinds of paranormal experience, affecting skeptics and believers alike. Experts think that such specters help us deal with painful or confusing events. A 2011 analysis published in the journal Death Studies looked at hundreds of incidents of supposed interaction with their deceased. The paper concluded that some occurrences provided instantaneous relief from painful grief symptoms, while others strengthened pre-existing religious views. So they believe that we want to believe in ghosts so that we're not alone, Tim, so that we can still feel our loved ones with us.
I see.
Now, here's one that's kind of glaringly obvious. Why do we believe in spirits? Because our brain is unwell. Ghostly occurrences can be a result of larger problems in our gray matter. For some, hearing voices or experiencing a vision can be an early indicator of medical conditions, such as schizophrenia. Some evidence even suggests that people with underlying brain disorders tend to have paranormal confrontations that are more intense and negative than the average brush with the beyond. Even in those without mental illness, temporary changes in brain activity can lead to run-ins with wraiths. People who experiment with psychoactive drugs like LSD and magic mushrooms frequently report spiritual fantasies. Furthermore, psychiatrists have deemed many visions the result of sleep paralysis, a poorly understood condition in which the afflicted wake up and find themselves unable to move. Scientists have yet to pinpoint the roots of this phenomenon, but some think it occurs when the brain crosses wires between conscious awareness and the dream-filled REM stage of slumber. So it's just bad brain, Tim.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe, Tim, according to popular science, you're just getting some bad vibrations. Sometimes people experience an otherworldly encounter simply because something in their environment is making a strange noise that sends their body into disarray. In the early 1980s, British engineer Vic Tandy was working on the research lab of a medical supply company when a strange feeling came over him. And all at once, he felt frigid and overwhelmed with a sense of impending doom. As he paced around the room to calm down, he suddenly sensed an ethereal presence. Moments later, he was sure he saw a gray apparition in his peripheral view. When he whirled around, the specter was gone. Tandy's colleagues had warned him the facility might be haunted, but the engineer was a skeptic by nature, so he scoured the place for an explanation. The culprit, it turned out to be a fan that hummed at a rate of 18.9 hertz. Though we can't sense their quivering, our eyeballs vibrate at a very similar frequency. The sound threw Tandy's vision for a loop and caused him to see a vague spook. The rogue fan may also have triggered his momentary panic, as studies suggest that certain noises can cause a person's organs to shake, which makes them hyperventilate. Waveforms that dwell around the acoustic sweet spot and below are known as infrasound, though they're inaudible to human ears, whose range bottoms out at about 20 hertz. The interval creates some fairly insidious side effects. In fact, after Tandy published his findings in 1998 in the Journal of Society for Cyclical Research, 18.9 hertz got a reputation as the fear frequency, Tim. Ooh, I wish we would have named the show Fear Frequency. Somebody just grabbed it. I just heard somebody lock it in.
Yep.
Most of us don't regularly carry around audio gauges, so it's hard to know how many hauntings might be explained by a buzzing fan or a rumbling fridge. For Tandy, the fright left him more curious than ever about ghosts. When it comes to supernatural phenomena, he told a reporter some years later, "I'm sitting on the fence." How about that? So far, that one seems to me like even the guy who's trying to disavow it is still not quite sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe I'm reading something into it. Could be. Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm interested. That's called the ghost in the machine theory, where it's things around us that could be affecting us. By the way, fearfrequency.com, Tim, is for sale. It's only $2,895 to register it.
Oh, is that all? Well,
Yep, just $2,895. So for those of you that are ready to start your own radio show called Fear Frequency, boom, there you have it.
Let me get on that right away.
Why do we believe in ghosts? Because you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Situational quirks can easily manipulate our senses into seeing what's not there. Consider the rural town of Anson, Texas, Tim, right near the Canadian border.
Yep.
Where locals long believed that if you drove out to the crossroads nearest the local cemetery and flashed your headlights, a mysterious flicker would bounce back at you. Legend held that the blink came from the lantern of an ill-fated mother searching for her son. In 2011, a group of skeptics armed with iPhones and Google Maps confirmed a less evocative explanation. Cars coming around the bend on a nearby highway cast these eerie beams of light. A far more troubling circumstantial peculiarity is the notion that mold and other pollutants often found in old buildings can mess with people's minds. Over the past few years, environmental engineering students at Clarkson University in Potsdam, New York, have been searching supposedly haunted structures across the Empire State for evidence of funky microbes. That would have been a great fusion band name for you, Tim. Funky Microbes.
Yeah, it's my side project. Yeah, Funky Microbes.
By the way, that website available for $1.99, funkymicrobes.com.
I'll get right on that, too.
While it's too early to draw conclusions, the places they visited seem to have higher spore counts than your average uninhabited building. Believers often cite the smell of rotting food, which fungi and mildew gather on, as a solid indicator of a phantom visit, and there's some evidence that microscopic growths can trigger anxiety, depression, or even psychosis. Some historians believe that rye bread contaminated with ergot fungus, the same microbe from which LSD is derived, may have triggered the presumed possessions that led to the Salem witch trials, which we talked about a few weeks ago, and is complete and utter bunk. Why do we see ghosts, Tim? Maybe your mind is just playing tricks on itself. Yeah. In recent years, neurologists have identified potential bases for the feeling that someone or something is haunting us. Research suggests seizures in the temporal lobe, which is what Dr. Barry Taff has talked about for years on our show.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Very cool. Let's see. Gray matter researchers have also spotted similar activity in controlled laboratory settings, it says, Tim. So they believe that these seizures in the temporal lobe, the area of your noggin that processes visual memory and spoken language, might trigger ghost sightings. Electrical disturbances in the brain area could make us feel connected to otherworldly realms. Patients who have a history of such problems are more likely to report paranormal beliefs. Furthermore, supernatural experiences tend to cluster between the hours of 2 and 4 a.m., which some studies suggest is when those seizures occur most. I'm going to put this article up for people to read too, because it's a very in-depth and well thought out article, but it might give some of you a better sense and a better feel of what's going on. So if you want to share this article with your paranoid friends, you can do that. Or if you just want to read the article for yourself and get a better examination of it. Our final science-y story, Tim.
Okay.
Myth, mystery, or mini muscle movement. What up with Ouija? That's what this question is asked by News Talk 1280 AM, The Kit. Consider the source, of course, but just in time for Halloween. The UK Mirror features a story about paranormal investigator outraged that Halloween shops are selling a Ouija board. Paul Marsters, who is a member of True Paranormal Events UK, says Ouija boards are most certainly not a toy and should not be available for kids to buy in shops for Halloween, never mind adults that are not trained in how to use them. Newsflash, I use one this season on the Holzer Files in a surprising way.
What?
Yeah, I use it like a throwing star to knock Shane down, Tim.
No, I don't blame you.
He was possessed by a spirit. I had to knock him down with something, so I throated him. Boom, right in the throat. No, that's not true. We do use a Ouija board. A spirit board. I'm sorry. Let me say that. It is a spirit board. To be specific, a crystal gazer board in an episode. And I alluded to it earlier today. But I'm very, I hope people like the out-of-the-box thinking. I know that I spoke to some experts. They liked, when I first said this is what I wanted to do, they're like, bad idea. And then when I told them, they're like, that's really kind of brilliant, Dave. And I love when people say brilliant and Dave in the same sentence, Tim. My ego needs that stroke from time to time.
Really?
Yeah, it does. I'm human. Okay, so here we go in this article. Here's what the Smithsonian Magazine has to say about Ouija boards. In February 1891, the first advertisement started appearing in papers. Ouija, the wonderful talking board. It boomed a Pittsburgh toy and novelty shop describing a magical device that answered questions about the past, present, and future with marvelous accuracy and promised never-failing amusement and recreation for all the classes. A link between the known and the unknown. Back then, Tim, how much do you think the Ouija board went for in 1891?
I'm going to say 15 cents, Dave.
$1.50.
Wow.
Investment. Yeah. Just think about that. A house only cost 89 cents back in 1891, Tim. I don't believe that to be true. The basic idea is that the users ask questions and the hands-on device known as a planchette somehow moves about the Ouija board, spelling out the answers. It's the somehow part that freaks us out. So if it isn't someone or something from the other side doing it, how is it happening? Back to the Smithsonian Magazine article, Ouija boards are not, scientists say, powered by spirits or even demons. Disappointing, but also potentially useful because they are powered by us. Even when we protest that we're not doing it, we swear. So what is doing it? Scientists say it's the idiometer effect, automatic muscular movements that take place without the conscious being aware, like with dowsing rods or pendulums. Now, right there's going to be a lot of people that are offended, but I will tell you, Tim, and you and I both been in full view of this. Mm-hmm. I've watched people that have used dowsing rods swear they're not moving their hands. Mm-hmm. Swear it. We're all staring at them and they're moving their hands. their brain cannot process the fact that they're moving their own hands. I've seen it. You've seen it.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Now, I've seen other people use them very proficiently and with shocking accuracy.
Yep.
To find things that they shouldn't know where it is. So it's fascinating to me. But I have watched people. So when you say, "Oh no, that's nonsense," I have seen people utilizing them that are shaking their hands. And I've got video. I've videotaped them doing it and showed it to them, and they still will not process the fact that their hand is moving. Even when I have, like, in the background, I'm filming something so you can see when their hand moves, you can see the thing becomes revealed or not revealed.
Yeah, when they make the little helicopter motion, you know that. Yeah.
Anyway, so if that's science, what's up with the paranormal investigator dude written up in the mirror? That guy, Paul Marsters, warns that deadly demons could be released by the boards if they are in the hands of anyone but mediums. It does not matter if they are plastic or wood. If the planchette spells the word Zeus, it is a demon trying to come through. I don't think it's Zeus. I think you were looking for Zozo.
Yeah, that could
Zeus
be.
is the godfather.
The godfather.
Yeah, well, he's like the father god, right? Or father of the gods kind of thing. Zeus. Yeah. Zozo is the name that you don't want to have come through the demon board. And you shouldn't even say the name. Too late. I've said it twice now. Never mind communicating with it. Apparently, other paranormal are unhappy with Ouija boards that are cheaply available. Marsters adds, "We won't even touch Ouija boards. We only have mediums to do that who are trained, as they're too dangerous and you don't know what it will entail using them." Where does one get training for Ouija board, Tim? I've looked into a lot of community studies programs. I can't recall one.
Professor Xavier's School for Ouija Studies, I believe.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I believe that's where you get training. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. I did not know that. Well, what I do know, though, it's time to take a break. We'll be back. We've got your stories, and we're going to go off the rails with the supernatural news, Tim. Now that we've blustered past science and heard Dave pontificate about the wonders of the Holzer files, we're going to go to your letters and supernatural news right after this. Welcome back to the program. Let's start with the mailbag, Tim. It's time to dig deep into the mailbag and look at your emails, your stories, questions, thoughts, ideas. Are you ready for this?
Ready.
All right, here we go. This one mixes both an email and a news story, Tim.
Okay.
Are you ready for this? Hi, Dave. Hope you had a great weekend enjoying the Vikings win yesterday. Barely. I have a link for this week's supernatural news, of which he shares. It's a new show appearing on Amazon TV network. These guys are good investigators. Well, so I have heard from fellow colleagues in paranormal teams I frequent. I hope it helps creating and contributing to you and Tim's great podcast. And that comes from David Clark in Essex, England. Thank you, David Clark. Let's take a quick look at the article, shall we, Tim?
Okay.
Pendle witch trials are the center point for a new Amazon Prime series. Pendle Hill will be the center point for the third series of the TV show The Haunted Haunts, or Haunted Hunts, rather. The infamous story of the Pendle witches has led paranormal hunters to the area for years, but now a team has filmed at Pendle Hill for a new series on Prime Video. Daniel Moss, lead investigator of The Haunted Hunts, said, "The reason we chose Pendle Hill was because I have personally had a bit of an obsession with the place since I was 15 years old. The fact that there are thousands and thousands of eyewitness accounts suggesting that the area is still haunted by the spirits since 1612 has always fascinated me. We just felt that it being one of the most famously haunted locations in Britain, it needed to be done really in the correct way. The area is believed to be haunted by the spirits of the Pendle witches who were tried in 1612 for the murders of 10 people by the use of witchcraft. The Pendle witch story is one of the most famous and well-documented set of trials for witches by the clerk of the court, Thomas Potts. One of the 12 accused of witchcraft, 10 were executed by hanging for their crimes, whilst one was found not guilty and another died in prison. We spent 1 week in Pendle Hill, and each day we were set with the task of investigating a brand new location in the area, Daniel continued. We covered the likes of Newchurch, Barley, places like that are real hotspots that tie in with the Pendle Witch story. The area has been the site of thousands of witness accounts, and Daniel and his team wanted to see what they could find from their investigations. So check that series out on Amazon. It is called The Haunted Hunts, Tim. Haunted Hunts, Tim. There you go.
Okay.
Good morrow, Darkness Dave, and maybe Tim.
Maybe me?
That's the way it starts.
Okay.
I feel it's obligatory that I state I am a longtime listener, but it has been years since I've written in. That's fine, Eric. You can listen and not write in. We just appreciate you listening, but we love when you write in, too. I just had a quick question. When it comes to possessed objects, such as creepy dolls that have accumulated, why can't they simply be burned in sort of a purification by fire? I ask this question for no other reason than curiosity's sake. Thank you for your time, and I hope this email reaches you and your families in good health. Sincerely, Eric. Well, thank you, Eric. We hope that you and your family are staying safe during this trying time as well. The idea, I believe, with burning is that it releases. Where you think it's purification, it is. It's releasing the spirit from the doll, but then it supposedly is allowed to wreak havoc. You're supposed to throw them in a body of water because the running water keeps the spirit bound to the doll. I don't write the history. I don't make the rules. I just live by bubble wrap dolls in my garage, Tim.
Yeah. The bubble wrap does what again?
It holds in freshness and spirits.
Oh, right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. This next email, Tim, from AI. Doon.
AI, you see.
AI Howard writes in and says, thank you. I'm saying it that way because the last one's big and bold. For bringing the show back to Stitcher. Thank you. Again, thank you from AI Howard. You're welcome, AI.
You're welcome.
Hi, Dave. I'm a longtime listener, and I've called and emailed before. I met my husband 5 years ago. He's a 30-year career paramedic. Most of his career was spent in Lowell, Massachusetts, which in the 80s and 90s was largely poverty-stricken urban area. He attended to murders, including children, countless suicides, drug overdoses, pretty much daily terrible car accidents. He can't sleep. He lives with those things and those that he couldn't save. He tried EMDR therapy 3 years ago. Now, we talked about this, I think, a week or two ago on the show, EMDR for therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder and some issues. He tried EMDR therapy 3 years ago, and after many previous years of trying everything, including therapy, medication, you name it, EDMR, which one is it now? Is it EMDR or EDMR? I don't remember. She's written it two ways, so I'm confused. I think it's EMDR, I believe. Maybe you could look that up while I'm reading the story, Tim. EMDR is the only thing that helped, and it didn't help a little. It made a tremendous difference for his PTSD. He can sleep again. Cool story. A palm reader in New Orleans once pulled us over and read him for free because she could see so many people following him around. She said they protect him. The first thing she said was, you have saved many lives, many. But the people he feels the most regret about actually guard him. He wasn't wearing anything that showed that what he does for a living, so it was pretty cool. If you want to share this, plug for EDMR, please
EMDR.
do. Is it EDMR?
EMDR.
EMDR, please do. It could help a lot of people if more people were aware that it was out there. So EMDR, for those of you that are struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder, doesn't mean you have to have been a part of a war. If you were abused as a child or as an adult and you're dealing with this, you've seen something horrific and you have trouble sleeping, EMDR may be your help. Please research it, look into it in your area. EMDR, that is it. Guess what? Moira Frazier. Your story is next. But first, we're going to do some more news, Tim, just to drag it out because she is really irritated that she sent us her email 3 weeks in a row and we haven't gotten to it yet. But I promised her we would do it on this episode.
All right, then.
But now, Tim, for something completely different.
All right.
A Florida fisherman lost at sea for 14 days, Tim, claims he was sexually assaulted by mermaids.
Of course he was.
A fisherman lost at sea for 14 days off the coast of Florida has been rescued by the United States Coast Guard this week. Alvin McAllister, 72, is found on a small rocky islet 200 miles off the nearest coastline where he shipwrecked 2 weeks ago and managed to survive off several seagulls, mussels, and urchins. The McAllister, for whom doctors do not fear for his life, was found suffering from intense hallucinations, possibly caused by dehydration and the toxins of unidentified mussels he consumed. According to this article, it says the patient shows symptoms of extreme dehydration and is still under medical attention at the moment, and he is still suffering from mild hallucinations, a St. John Baptist Hospital spokesperson told reporters. He described in graphic detail how he was forced to perform oral sex on the fish-like genitals of these aquatic creatures, not only onto the women, but also onto the men. McAllister's brother added in tears, visibly grateful to find his brother alive. McAllister, who is believed to have ingurgitated some form of toxin such as lead or mercury found in dangerous quantities in certain varieties of mussels he possibly consumed, is still under psychiatric evaluation. Although Mr. McAllister does not present abnormal injuries, there is inflammation to the genital and anal area. It's highly unlikely he was sexually exploited or sodomized by living sea creatures, and these are probably just self-inflicted, explained one medical expert. That's what that medical expert wants us to believe, Tim. Not that there's randy rapist mermaids out there.
Do you think McAllister started the C2 movement?
C2, shut up. Although McAllister's mental state is presently unstable, doctors believe he should heal completely in the weeks to come after his body has kind of purged all of the dangerous levels of toxins he's been exposed to, like mercury and the mussels and semen from a merman, Tim. Just saying. Maybe we shouldn't be so quick to denounce it.
I'm not denouncing anything.
I think you are. No. Secretly, I believe you're denouncing his claim to have been raped by mer people. What do you think about that claim, Tim?
I think it probably happened.
Our next news story, they're here. We all know that line. It's from one of the spookiest, most famous in all of horror. It's from the film Poltergeist. And that it comes from Carol Ann Freeling, played by the adorable Heather O'Rourke, young and blonde and cherubic, makes it all the more terrifying. The they she's referring to are ghosts who've come into her suburban home through a portal, and with them has come something known as the Beast, a dark presence that will eventually snatch Carol Ann through her bedroom closet and take her into another dimension. But before all that happens, the Freeling home experiences paranormal activity that one can liken to poltergeists of the film's title. Poltergeists are known as noisy spirits prone to physical disturbances like raps on the wall, bent spoons, moving furniture. There have been thousands of real-life reported cases of poltergeist activity around the world, and one such case loosely inspired the film Poltergeist. So what happened in the real story that motivated this movie? Well, it was the Herman house where this took place. On the evening of February 3rd, 1958, a man named James Herman from Seaford, Long Island, New York, received a telephone call at work from his wife, Lucille. She informed him and she and their teenage children, Jimmy and Lucy, that they heard a series of popping sounds coming from various spots around the house. When they investigated, they found uncapped bottles of several substances completely upended in many different rooms, including a vial of holy water, which spilled all over the bedroom dresser. Now, Herman, skeptical of the whole thing, advised his family to stay calm and to keep the occurrences to themselves. He believed some prankster teenagers got inside and tried to spook the family. It was important to him to keep things under control, but 5 days later, the same thing happened again. And the next day it happened again. This time, Mr. Herman watched in horror as bottles moved about his bathroom as if dragged by some unseen hand. This time, though, Tim, he called the police.
Mm-hmm.
When the police arrived, Tim, more bottles began popping throughout the home. They performed a series of tests to rule out radio transmissions or electrical disturbances, but the bottles were not warm or otherwise charged. Whatever was happening to them could not be explained with logic. On February 17th, a priest came to the house to bless it. What happened then, Tim? Well, news of the activity at the Herman house spread like wildfire and was the subject of an article in Life magazine. Can you believe that? Life magazine covered it. People wrote that Herman's letters offering potential reasonable explanations while others believed the activity to be the result of poltergeist. Whatever the case, more activity occurred. The officers even witnessed the moving of objects this time. To make matters all the more unusual, the Herman's house was not your typical haunted house. It was a suburban model purchased back in 1953, brand new. The Hermans were the only people who ever lived there. There was nothing to indicate the unfinished business of some previous tenant. So why did this seem like an otherwise traditional haunting? Well, that's when Dr. J.B. Ryan, director of Duke University's parapsychology laboratory, hoped to find out. He approached the Hermans after about a month of disturbances. Ryan believed that the presence of the teenage Herman children might have attracted the poltergeist activity. Adolescents are usually presents in the home where poltergeist activity takes place, Tim. Now, he brought some of his colleagues to the house, and they studied it, interviewing the family and recording some of the mysterious occurrences. However, shortly after their arrival, the activity ceased. All in all, there were about 70 documented reports of unusual activities in the house between February 3rd and March 10th. The family eventually moved away. Years later, daughter Lucille appeared in a documentary, Real Fear, The Truth Behind the Movies, which aired on the Chiller Network. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Now, something of note, the subject of that documentary also featured the Amityville Horror House, which is only 7 miles away from the Herman house, Tim.
Interesting.
Uh-huh. So how did those events inspire Poltergeist? Good question. Fans of the 1982 Tobe Hooper-directed, Steven Spielberg-produced horror film Poltergeist will recognize the Herman story. It sounds familiar to what the Freeling family goes through. A young, happy family moves into a new suburban home with their children and quickly notice disturbances, noises, bent utensils, objects moving about. When the activity increases, they seek help from a local university parapsychology department who comes to investigate the house. Eventually, fed up with the lack of resolution and the disappearance of their daughter, they seek out a psychic who helps them cleanse the house. Obviously, Poltergeist is more sensationalized than the story of the Hermans. There are physical apparitions, Native American burial grounds, body-chomping portals, and skeletons popping out of the swimming pool. The film is also said to be cursed. Stars Dominique Dunn and Heather O'Rourke both passed away very young, and other mysterious activity was reported on set. Pretty interesting stuff.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, Lucy Herman told the HuffPost Weird News around the release of Real Fear that she had never seen the movie Poltergeist. How about them apples?
It's interesting in the apples.
You like them apples, Tim?
Yeah.
Let me see where our news story takes us next, Tim. We're going to go to an audio daily double before we get to Myra's email, Tim. This first audio daily double comes from a buddy of our show. He is Dan Aykroyd. You recognize him from Ghostbusters. He is also the narrator of the TV series on Travel Channel, Haunted Hotels. So let's go ahead and take a listen to this story and see what Dan has to say about the paranormal to Chicago Today, Channel 5's TV series.
You also narrate a series on the Travel Channel called Hotel Paranormal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so what draws you to the afterlife so much?
Well, my family have a book here. My great-grandfather was a dentist in the town I'm in now, Kingston, Ontario, in the 1920s. At that time, people were looking for kind of a new religion, something to looking for hope somehow. So spiritualism began to emerge as a religion, and it started in Western New York. You can search all your listeners, and you should search the Fox sisters, Katie and Maggie. They claim to have a spirit living in their house. They opened that spirit to the world. Spiritualism opened up as a movement. It spawned support for runaway slaves, for suffragettes, for feminism. Lilydale, New York was a community that my great-grandfather Sam, the dentist, belonged to because he wanted these new values was what they were proposing. And a very strong feminist community as well. And so my great-grandfather was a supporter, and part of the tenets there were studying seances, the afterlife, mediumship. Can you reach someone from the other side? So this was like my family business. It was passed on to my grandfather, who was an engineer with Bell Telephone. My dad, who was a civil engineer. Both mathematicians, empirical guys. You know, they're not looking to make things up here. And so as a kid, at the summer cottage, I'd be sitting around, instead of reading Life or Look or National Geographic, I was reading the American Society for Psychical Research magazines, the British Society for Psychical Research, the works of Arthur Conan Doyle, and all these psychic researchers. So it just was in my family. That's why I came up with the Ghostbusters, because it was just there always,
So you heard it from him personally, Dan Aykroyd, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
His interest in the paranormal. We were really lucky. We, in our very first year on the air, got a chance to interview Dan Aykroyd about his documentary on UFOs. Then, years later, we got to sit down and talk with Dan Aykroyd and his father, Peter Aykroyd, about the family's legacy with the paranormal. And you know what, Tim?
What's that?
Listeners have not heard those episodes in years.
Not true. They did hear the
Shh, 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 shh. Close your pretty mouth. Just let me build up some suspense, Tim.
Don't speak mistruths, Mr. Schrader.
Shh.
They did hear.
They haven't heard the original episodes. We've heard them since we've re-edited and put them back out a few years ago. But we now have the Darchives available. Tim is quickly putting together all of our old shows so that you can hear them as part of Stitcher Premium and Stitcher. So you can hear them on Stitcher with the commercials, or you can hear them on Stitcher Premium without commercials. It's a great way to listen to our Darchives. Classy. Darchives, Tim.
Yeah.
Gives you a chance to go back in history and hear those for your very own. So check it out. Make sure that you subscribe, listen, and go along with us. And remember, please rate and review the show. However you listen, rate and review the show. We really do want to keep spreading the show, building it, growing it, and making it bigger and better than it ever has been before. As we head into our 15th anniversary, Tim, how is that even possible? 15 years of doing this. We just want to continue to grow. So help us out with that. All right, Tim. I told you, we've got stories to read. We've got letters from listeners. Mm-hmm. Moira has sent this story not once, Tim, not twice, but 3 times a lady. She wants to share her paranormal encounter. She didn't call in to the Voices from Beyond voicemail, 651-300-4977, Tim. 651-300-4977. She didn't call that number. She typed this tome for me to read and share on this episode.
Oh, how nice of her.
Are you ready to do that?
I'm ready.
Let's take a call first, Tim.
Hey guys, Janet from Boston here. Okay, years ago I was living in an apartment with my cat Coco. We lived there happily many years, but I wanted a dog too, so I bought a house with a yard. Being an old fellow, Coco was upset by the move and was especially freaked out that he had to navigate stairs in the new house. Within weeks, though, he was zipping up and down the stairs and sometimes even sleeping on the landing halfway up. Some evenings, though, I'd see small moving shadows on the stairs. And sometimes I'd see Coco going up the stairs, then turn around and see him sleeping on the couch with the dog. Did we have a cat ghost, or could Coco bilocate? Either way, it really didn't bother me. There were no scary vibes about the phenomenon. About 8 months later, Coco crossed the Rainbow Bridge. I never saw shadows or the cat on the stairs after that, so I presumed they went together. Fast forward 20 years. I'm still in the same house with 14-year-old Penny Dog, 19-year-old Griffin Cat, and 2 girl cats named Ginger and Marianne. Oh, and my husband Nelson, too. Of all the pets, redheaded Ginger is the troublemaker. As with all our cats, she's an indoor cat and isn't supposed to go outside. But she tries to sneak out when we take Penny in the yard. So we created an airlock system by shutting the kitchen door before opening the back door. Clever Ginger has figured this out, though. So when she notices Penny getting ready to go out, she rushes past the airlock and hides so I can't toss her in the kitchen and shut the door. Then she waits until Penny's going out and tries to dash out the door. And that's what happened this morning at 5:30. Penny and I were both groggy, but Ginger was full of vinegar, so she ran ahead of us toward the back door. As I opened the back door, she rushed past both of us. I even tried to body block her, but she swerved past me and ran down the back steps. It was still dark out, so I decided to let her get cold and wet as a lesson and look for her when it got light. As I was standing on the back stairs waiting for Penny to pee, I glanced through the storm door back into the house and saw approaching a small cat that looked kind of like Ginger, but it was white, wispy, and translucent. The cat ghost was back! I leaned in to get a better look, but it disappeared. Now, guys, I wasn't dreaming. I know this because my dreams last night featured Patrick Stewart as Daddy Warbucks and me as Annie. So an hour later, I went into the yard and called for Ginger. Usually she comes right away, eager to get her breakfast. But she didn't come. I was so annoyed at that bratty cat. I went upstairs to get dressed so I could take Penny for her walk. I gasped out loud. There was Ginger, sleeping on the bed with my husband, fast asleep. So what was going on this morning? Was the wispy white cat a ghost, but also the one who ran ahead of us and then pushed past me to go down the stairs? What was going on? I'm really not sure what the situation here is. Has Ginger learned how to bilocate? Or is the ghost cat a psychopomp who came for Coco years ago and is now preparing Griffin for his journey to the Rainbow Bridge? Or maybe did another cat sneak into the house last night and escape this morning? Who knows? Cats are weird. I'll keep you posted if we have any other sightings. Happy Halloween, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right. Very cool. Thank you for calling in, sharing your story with us. All right. I think I've teased long enough, Tim. What do you think?
I think you have, yeah.
Yeah, have I? Have
Yeah.
I really? Moira Frazier? How about if we read another news story? No, we're going to read your story. Past life experience. This story starts in a very roundabout way, but please bear with me, she says. My father always rode a bicycle as he didn't drive, and we had to cycle past a very large, wicked dog on his way to and from work. One evening, while I was about 4 years old, he arrived home in a terrible state, his trousers torn and his leg bleeding very badly. The dog had chased him, caught up with him, and gave him a terrible bite. I remember looking amazed at his ashen face when he entered the kitchen and him saying to my mother, "I've never been so scared." Wherein I piped up, "You don't know what being scared is." Ooh, snippy little girl.
Yeah.
Now, this was a very strange thing for a 4-year-old child to say, and my mother told me since that it was extremely disarming and frightening as I said it in such a very adult, sincere way. The reason for my unusual statement was this. For the previous few weeks, I had been having a recurring nightmare, which I hadn't the vocabulary to explain, only telling my parents that I had a bad dream. This was the dream. I was in a huge gathering of people, mostly women and older people. I was sure that I was a boy, and I was about 10 or 11 years old. The rain was falling, it was dark and muddy, and I was exhausted and very, very hungry. When I looked around in the distance, I could see the glow of what seemed like thousands of campfires burning. Although I was amongst hundreds of people, it was eerily quiet. I didn't know where I was or why I was there, but I had the strong feeling that I was with members of my family. I remember, too, feeling very jealous of a younger boy in the group who had a drum slung around his neck by a rough piece of cord that he would beat the drum loudly with a roughly hewn stick in time with our steps as we were walking along. I so very much wanted to play that drum. Then the scene somehow shifted. I was still in the rain and the mud, but there was now an overwhelming feeling of impending danger, and the atmosphere was electric with fear. Suddenly, in the distance, there came a whooshing, a low whistling sound getting nearer and louder. Everyone started to shout and run in panic, and I was roughly pushed in the back onto my face into the mud. I had the sensation that heavy sacks were being thrown on top of me, and then felt a weighty thud that expelled all the air from my lungs. I had the feeling that it was my mother that had thrown herself across my body. Fear and sheer terror overwhelmed me. I was suffocating, gasping for breath, trying to turn my nose and mouth out of the mud. The weight on my back was crushing me. I have never since been so absolutely terrified. The whistling sound got nearer and nearer, soon becoming deafening. Then everything began to swim, and there was nothing after that. Just complete silence and darkness. When I awakened from my nightmare, drenched with sweat, the feeling of terror would last for a long, long time, and I couldn't explain to my parents why I was so frightened or what was going on. I didn't understand any of it, and I had no words to describe any of the things that were happening to me in my dream. This nightmare occurred every night and went on for, as far as I was concerned, months and months. Night after night, the prospect of me going to bed was horrifying, knowing what was lying in wait. Eventually, over the years, the exact same dream would get less frequent, but it would still come back to haunt me every so often. The feeling of fear and dread not getting any less with the passing years. A few years later, when I was about 13 years old, my much older brother had learned to drive, so he decided he would treat my parents and I to a couple of days just driving around the countryside, showing off his newly acquired driving skills and staying in bed and breakfasts on a mini holiday break. I remember it started to rain as we left home, and the rain didn't stop for the whole time we were away, and we got stuck in a particularly gloomy guest house, not venturing out in the storm, with only a small black and white TV for company. There were only 2 or 3 channels at the time, and programs were very hit or miss. A film came on. It was Laurence Olivier's 1944 adaptation of Shakespeare's Henry V. Not exactly the kind of viewing that would appeal to a 13-year-old or my folks either, but there was nothing else to do. I glanced at the TV screen every so often with no great interest, drawing with my crayons, not paying much attention until it came to the scene during the Battle of Agincourt, where the English archers were preparing for the attack against the French army. The archers lined up and put their arrows into the bows and aimed into the sky. A wave of arrows filled the air. And it was then that I became totally distressed and disturbed. I believe that I blacked out, and I could hear in my head the sound of air whirring and whistling through the arrow's feathers, the similar terrifying whooshing sound that I had been hearing in my dreams since I was 4 years old. I immediately started to have an extreme panic attack. I couldn't breathe. I started violently shaking, flailing around, and this really frightened my parents because they told me afterwards that they thought I was having an epileptic fit, as my reaction was so severe. At that moment, I immediately knew the meaning of my dream. This is how I died. The only time I had ever seen bows being fired was in cowboy movies or films about Robin Hood, where the arrows were fired just straight on, so none of my dream scenes had made any sense to me. When I got older, I became fascinated with the medieval era and the battles that took place in the period, and little by little, my experiences and my dreams began to come together and suddenly make sense. I have since found that the bows that were used in this period of time were called longbows and were over 6 feet long, and the arrows over 3 feet long. And the range they could accurately fire was 400 yards. And the power of them was so strong that the arrows were able to pierce armor. I also found out that not only did soldiers go into battle, but it was quite normal for soldiers' entire families to follow him to whatever war was being fought. This had never occurred to me before. It was standard practice for a soldier's wife and family to join their husbands on campaign, performing wifely duties such as cooking meals, washing clothes, sewing, obtaining food, and water supplies, and treating wounds. They would also scavenge and loot after the battle, trying to pick up any spoils they could glean from the dead and injured. They would also carry bags of grain, cooking pots, even chickens and goats traveled along, and any other supplies needed. I have given great thought and did a lot of research to this period of history over the years, trying to take and make sense of any details of that dream. And little by little, small things have come back to me, feelings becoming more pronounced and vivid, and the following scenario is the only thing that makes sense to me. And I'm totally convinced that my dreams were memories of my death. Here's the conclusion that I've come to. I was with my mother and other members of the family and people from my village that we were in on the baggage train following the army. When the battle occurred, I still don't know. Which battle was it? It was only the film scenes from the Battle of Agincourt that made my memories flood back, but it could have been at any of the 100 of battles that included longbows at their highly deadly top weapons in the medieval era. Who was fighting against whom? Again, I don't know. I do know that in my dream, when the first flight of arrows were fired, our baggage train was so close, everyone started to throw themselves onto the ground and pull sacks of grain on top of themselves, and others would scramble to take shelter under carts and wagons to try to avoid the rain of deadly shafts. I know that my mother pushed me to the ground and threw whatever sacks of goods on top of me to try to save me from the arrow's penetration. Then she threw herself on me trying to save me, but because the arrows were 3 feet long and the velocity and strength of them in flight was nearly 150 miles per hour, nothing in their path was safe. I believe I was pierced with an arrow, or arrows, and that despite my mother's attempts to protect me, I perished at that time. I haven't had that dream now for many years, but it still is clear and vivid as it was when I started at 4 years old, and the feelings of hunger, jealousy, and the drummer boy, and then the final fear of my impending death are still as terrifyingly paralyzing as they were over 50 years ago. The most interesting part of the whole dream was the noise that the arrows made as they were falling. Was it the wind whistling through the arrow's fletches? As I said, watching cowboy or Hollywood Robin Hood films were the only time that I'd seen bows and arrows were used, and there was certainly no sound. How could I have known this at 4 years old? Only that I was actually seeing and hearing it, and I was there. The fact that the arrows were fired in an arc into the air, just another factor that I would have never thought about had I not seen it portrayed on Henry V. A few years ago, I told a close friend about my dream and the questions it raised and the fear I still felt when recalling it. She had recently consulted a hypnotherapist for phobia, and she suggested that I give him a visit. I duly made an appointment and went to see if I could be regressed back to that final day in my past life. Unfortunately, nothing much happened. I couldn't really be put under, and I was really disappointed, but I am totally convinced that my dream experience is a residue of a past life in some baggage train of some forgotten or unforgotten army fighting in the cold and mud in medieval Europe, where at a too early age, I and my family perished in a rain of arrows. Great story, Moira. Thank you so much. We appreciate you sharing that with us and being patient. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to get to the story until this week, but it was well worth it. Don't you think, Timothy?
Oh, yeah,
well
most
worth it.
definitely.
Well, worth it, Tim. That's all I got to say. Worth it. We got some more news to take a peek at. Shall we, Tim?
Sure.
How about if we take a nice little vacation together, Tim? Would you like to do that?
Where are we going?
All right, Tim. Let's load up and head off to Scotland.
Okay.
Yeah. Who doesn't like the sound of bagpipes in the morning? We can also stay in a castle with a murder pit.
Well,
this Halloween, you can go to a 600-year-old Scottish castle. Scottish castle. Suddenly, I'm starting to channel Sean Connery. But it also has a darker side, as a paranormal investigator says ghosts attacked her there. If you're a fan of scary things, then you might have snuggled down to watch some creepy films. But if you missed out on a summer holiday, did you know there are some spooky staycations that you can enjoy? Right in the UK, there are plenty of dark tourism stays to try, perfect for a late October jolly. One such place is Ayrshire Castle in Scotland, Tim. The haunted house, complete with a 600-year-old murder pit. Yeah. We know we didn't know what a murder pit was either, but it's very Halloween. The 15th century castle was a present to Princess Margaret, James II of Scotland's daughter. The destination is very traditional and features a stone bedroom, suits of armor, and cavernous fireplaces, plus the murder hole and a pit prison. The murder hole sits by the entrance and is hidden behind a trap door, so you'll have to explore the castle to find it, Tim. What is now the formal Great Hall of this comfortable but unusual home once served as a courtroom. It comes complete with a pit, prison, behind a flagstone trap door. There's also a murder hole through which hot oil would have been poured over unwelcome visitors outside. This landmark property lies in its own grounds at the foot of a hill just inland from the Ayrshire coast. Paranormal investigators have said the creepy castle is packed with ghosts, Tim. Packed with ghosts.
Yeah.
Speaking to local newspaper, ghost hunter Sharon McKee explains her hair-raising experience. We were doing a seance in one of the bedrooms when something physically attacked me and transfigured its energy onto me. If you want to book a stay, then make sure to be quick about it, Tim. Searches online for haunted house have gone up by half in the last few years. 2 nights over Halloween will set you back £2,194 to rent the castle for yourself, Tim.
That's not cheap.
Not cheap, but might be worth it. Just saying. Something to consider, Timothy. My birthday's coming up. You and I, Scotland, murder pit. What do you think?
Hot oil?
Wow, now you're talking.
Yeah.
All right, maybe that's a little too far, Tim. Maybe it's a little too expensive. How about if we just go to Duluth? Duluth is on fire. We don't need no water. Let the mother burn.
Sure.
Sorry, my musical Tourette's is kicking in heavy today.
I guess.
The Duluth Union Depot was built in 1892. At the height of its operation, it served 7 major train lines and thousands of passengers. Today, it serves as a multi-use cultural space housing the Lake Superior Railroad Museum and Duluth Art Institute. Surely a building that old has a few ghosts in it, according to this article. Ken Bueller, Executive Director of the Lake Superior Railroad Museum and General Manager of the North Shore Scenic Railroad, knows a tale or two, Tim. The first hair raiser involved former St. Louis County Historical Society curator Melissa Brooks Ojibwe, who was sifting through artifacts in the depot's attic when she was struck by a blast of cold air. Brooks Ojibwe looked down to see a little girl dressed in all-white garb from the 1890s standing behind her. The girl was staring at a wicker baby buggy. It's hard to say, even one time slow, high up on the shelves. By the time the curator looked up and back, the girl disappeared. Brooks Ojibwe was rocked by the incident, says Bueller, and she wasn't the type of person prone to fantastical storytelling. Bueller's second story brings physical evidence into play, Tim. Physical evidence. A decade ago, he received a letter from a bride who'd held her wedding at the depot. She enclosed 3 time-stamped images from the reception taken seconds apart. The first and third photographs captured her father and daughter dance with the DJ in the background. The second picture was exactly the same, except there was a little girl in the background, dressed all in white, in 1890s garb, clutching her knees to her chest. By the way, the woman wrote, "There were no children at our wedding. I've seen the pictures, so I know they exist," said Bueller, but he still has no idea who the child could be. Now, they didn't include the picture of that in this article, so I won't be putting it up on our news page. So that is a bit of a bummer. The paranormal people will tell you that you don't have to have a tragic event, a mysterious murder, or a forlorn love to have a haunting, he says. Depending on your beliefs, we are energy, and when we pass, our energy still exists. You might call it a soul. Some energy crosses over, and some energy is comfortable in a place. For the little girl, though, maybe that place is the Duluth Depot. The 128-year-old station has opened its doors to numerous paranormal investigators in recent years. The groups have recorded several riveting pieces of evidence, including a video of a hazy silhouette turning into an orb-like apparition levitating in the Northland train car, a business-class carriage built back in 1916. Bueller has also encountered his share of phonies. He recalls a hunt involving 2 clairvoyants who became agitated in the Northern Pacific Railroad boardroom. They claimed there was a huge amount of animosity in the room, that people were arguing, and it was nearly coming to blows, Bueller said. They said we were intruding on their work and they wanted us to leave. So the woman hustled us out of the room and slammed the doors behind them. I don't doubt that there could have been controversy in that boardroom once upon a time, but I wasn't buying their act. Though he hasn't had any paranormal encounters himself, he doesn't doubt the stories of others. The universe is just too big, he says. There's a whole realm of things we will never understand, never touch, and never know. I'm not sure I'm a believer, but I'm not a disbeliever. He ends the article, Tim. How do you like them apples?
Those are pretty good apples. You know what? I actually think that Bueller is a Beeler, and I think that's a relative.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Bueller.
That's my. I think that's my Uncle Robert's brother-in-law.
Well, why don't you touch base with them? Let's get out there and investigate.
I think we should.
Our final trip, Tim, together is to the haunted streets of Ely. No, not Minnesota, Tim. Okay. The gloomy, spooky season is very much upon us, and we take a look back at some of the ghostly goings-on around Cambridgeshire. Even if you don't believe in the supernatural, you can be entertained by a good ghost story, and Ely has plenty, according to this article. The historic cathedral city is brimming with stories of eerie happenings. The unexplained events are listed on the paranormal database, a collection of historical and recent spooky sightings that have been taken place in Britain and Ireland. We've dug into the database to dust off some of Ely's most intriguing paranormal tales. Number 7, 9, and 11 Silver Street. In the 80s and 90s, a ghost was reported to haunt 3 cottages on Silver Street. Once believed to be a single house, the 3 cottages claimed to share the same ghost. The spirit, nicknamed Adrian by one of the occupiers, has been heard crying upstairs and seen walking through the wall, leading to house number 9. Number 9? Number 9? It's a Beatles reference to Monks in the Shadows, which again would be a great fusion band name, Tim. You should consider.
Yeah.
Different parts of Ely are believed to be haunted by monks, sometimes accompanied by poltergeist activity. Some people in the 20th century have reported seeing mysterious footprints appear in the snow and shadow figures peering out of windows. Spooky areas include Ely High Street, Infirmary Lane, and Ely Cathedral Lawn. Maybe, Tim, you don't want to just see ghosts of adults and children. Maybe you want to see a nice ghost dog spirit.
That'd be nice.
ghost dog has been reported to haunt an area between Ely and Walsingham to avenge its death at the hands of an evil friar.
No.
Yeah, not an air fryer, which is something different, Tim. The legend says, after saving a girl from an attempted rape by a cruel friar, the dog was cruelly wounded and died of its injuries. It continues to hunt down its attacker. So, Tim, you and I should not walk around in our friar uniforms.
Yeah, that'd be cruel and unusual. Yeah.
Or there is the legend of Etheldria. It's been around since the 7th century. Etheldria, founded on the monastery of Ely after leaving her husband, King Egfrith of Northumbria. He requested to bed her after 12 years of sexless marriage. Etheldria is credited with saving Ely from famine using only the milk from 2 does. She's believed to still haunt the cathedral's prior's house, Tim. With nobody to guide it, the blue-colored hand of Etheldria, I think is how you say it, is said to run up and down the banister of the rear staircase. The saint's buried hand is the only part of her remains that is located in a nearby street. The same site is also known for the ghost of a nun who carries a candle, and the spirit of a priest is also believed to be roaming that dwelling. Then we have the haunted house of Oliver Cromwell. The Oliver Cromwell House, which houses the Tourist Information Center, has been the site of various hauntings. In 1979, footsteps were heard moving across a corridor in the home, followed by the opening and closing of a door. A blue-colored woman has also been seen in the house. Other common sightings at the museum include a mysterious blue lady who wanders the halls, Civil War-era soldiers, and even Cromwell himself. Visitors have apparently claimed to feel cold or uneasy while inside the house or experience strange visions or smells. And then there's the ghostly monks on a barge, Tim. That could be a rap band.
I think it is. Yeah, they opened for Wu-Tang Clan actually recently. Yeah.
Ghostly monks on a barge. Put your hands together, Minnesota! Ghostly monks on a barge! The ghosts of monks crewing a barge have been spotted on the Great River Ouse. On misty evenings, it has been reported people have heard that apparitions chanting hymns. Legend has it that the ghosts are taking the dead body of a woman towards Ely. It is believed to be the corpse of Saint Withburga, taken from her grave at East Dereham by monks acting on the orders of the abbot of Ely. How about that, Tim? Lots going on in that area.
Boy, yeah, there is.
Yeah. Monks on a barge. Huh. Let's cleanse our palate.
That sounds like an MC Hammer song. Monks on a barge, what was it? Bumps in a pump or pumps in a bump or whatever it was. And
I don't know.
Monks on a barge, and it all sounds like MC Hammer songs. I don't know.
Good God, we've got just a handful of stories left, but let's take another call. Remember, if you want to be a part of the show, Voices from Beyond voicemail 651-300-4977, just like this caller.
Hey, what up, Dave? What up, Tim? Been listening to you guys for quite some time. I'm a truck driver, and I had a crazy thing happen to me a couple years ago. My mother, she passed away from melanoma in 2007, so it's been about 13 years. Anyways, she had a spot on her skin, and it ended up being cancerous. The doctor never caught it. It was a big crazy thing. Anyway, she unfortunately passed away, spread to her brain, and she was put in the hospice care. She always told me she'd look out for me some way, and I'd never have anything to worry about. Well, fast forward 12 years later, I used to run restaurants. And I just recently started truck driving. And so I'm running a restaurant, everything's going well. I loving life, living life, and this girl, I see her really nervous, and she's one of my servers, super nervous. I walked up to her, what's going on? She looks at me and she's like, I have this mole on my skin, I'm just really scared, and I'm afraid to go. And I'm like, don't worry, I'll go in with you, because speaking from my point of view, and, I just know how it is and how scary cancer can be. Obviously, everyone's had cancer affect their family somehow, so we all know how scary it can be. So I told her, I'm like, listen, I'm going to go in with you. We'll be okay. So we go in there. She goes first. The guy takes them all off. Fast forward her story a couple weeks forward. She ended up getting that tested, and it ended up being nothing. So after her, it was my turn to go in, And so me not even going in there for anything, just to support her, goes in the doctor's office, and they call me back. I go back, and I undress, put my skivvies on, and he's like, looks over my body. He's like, there's a spot I want to remove on your back. I'm not sure what it is, and so he removes it. Fast forward, ended up being cancerous. I go in, he removes a big chunk of my back out, gets it all. I get this removed. Fast forward, they remove a big chunk out of my back. I'm sitting in the office of the doctor. Great doctor, amazing doctor, super nice, super intelligent. He told me how, pretty straightforward, because I feel though if you're a doctor, you need to be. He sits me down. He's like, you know what? Because I told him I was in there. I wasn't in there for myself. I was in there to actually support someone that was afraid to come in. And he looked at me and he's like, I think if it wasn't for that lady, you fast forward 5 years, we'd be having a different story, and it'd be a story on who the next of kin was, and how much time I had to live. And it really struck me as odd, and I went home that night, and I'm like, what the heck? Maybe, I don't know. I believe in good people that do good things happen to them. I feel as though not enough of that's going around. People really aren't being kind to each other. I've been listening to you guys for it's been about 7 years. I used to live in Minnesota, started listening there, and well, the story is, maybe if you're just kind to people, good things happen to you. Karma's the real thing, and maybe there are people looking out for us. We just need to keep our eyes open everywhere, and not just discount things that are happening to us, but take life as a blessing and look out for those blessings. Well, God bless you guys, and stay safe, and keep on trucking. I'll keep on listening. Take care. Brewster's out. Bye.
Very cool. All right, Timothy, we're moving on to our last grouping of stories. We're going to go now to Disney, the happiest or perhaps scariest place on earth, Tim.
Well, there's that, yeah.
Yeah. This story was posted on ITM, InsideTheMagic.com, 2 weeks ago. We all know about the 999 happy haunts on Haunted Mansion, but have you ever heard of the ghostly legends that haunt the walls? From the man with the cane to the little boy, there are several different legends, but not all of them appear at the Haunted Mansion. In fact, there are tons of different legends of ghosts that are supposedly on Disney property, including George from Pirates of the Caribbean. With Halloween just around the corner, one Reddit user took to the platform to ask others if they ever had any kind of strange, spooky experiences at Walt Disney World, such as seeing the man with the cane on the Haunted Mansion or having an experience with George. And the answers are so fun. So let's dive into these, Tim, and see what type of paranormal and spooky stories that guests shared, shall we?
Sure.
Now, in case you're not aware, there is an urban legend of a man with a cane roaming through the Haunted Mansion at Disney. The man with the cane is an urban legend about cast members who have seen an old man with a cane riding the doom buggies in the Haunted Mansion. The story goes that he can be seen in the area between the offload and onload points in the Haunted Mansion. They say that he is sitting alone in the buggy, holding a cane in his lap and staring straight forward. Then there's the ghost of George. Another legend in Disney parks is over in Adventureland on Pirates of the Caribbean. In case you aren't aware, here's what the Reddit person wrote. George is probably the most famous spooky story at Walt Disney World. The story goes that when the Pirates of the Caribbean was being built, a construction worker fell and died in the ride. No one has ever uncovered proof of a death at the ride. Cast members will attribute any malfunction in the ride to a ghost named George. CM's cast members will have to say, "Good morning, George," when opening the ride, and "Good night, George," when closing it. Some CMs say that George is so responsive that if you just say, "Good night," or "George, could you break that ride?" something will break down. Some CMs say that George hasn't responded since 2005, which probably just means that Disney fixed whatever broken piece of equipment was responsible for George's visits, Tim. Though this one Reddit user didn't have any experiences for themselves, they love hearing these stories. I've not personally had any paranormal experiences at Walt Disney World, but I'm obsessed with all of this. I love the man with the cane and the crying boy. They continued by asking about another legend, writing, "Most people have heard about George at the Pirates of the Caribbean, but have you ever heard the urban legend of the ladies?" This is pure nightmare fuel. You ready for this, Tim?
Ready.
One Reddit user responded to this question above, writing, "I've heard of the ladies, but also heard from a lot of cast members about the wire-haired lady that I think may be part of that legend. They say that they will see a floating wired-haired lady on the security monitors on the same section. They say she will show up, then not be seen for years, and carries the sense of dread." Though there aren't any actual legends on Tom Sawyer Island, one user shared, "It's still a bit creepy walking around back there. Not exactly related to the paranormal, but I get chills when exploring the caves of Tom Sawyer's Island. I think it's the quietness and the claustrophobia that gets to me." How about the World Showcase? Though there wasn't any actual activity, one user shared, "It's pretty eerie walking around World Showcase late at night after most of the guests are gone. It's surprisingly dark, and there are some of the pavilions that have little nooks and crannies." Nooks and crannies, Tim. If you're terrified of nooks and crannies, do not eat Thomas's English muffins, because that's what they're built on, Tim. Nooks and crannies.
I believe it.
Now, there's an article that follows this up saying everything you need to know about George the pirate ghost. Shall we read that? Shall we follow up, Tim?
I believe we should.
Okay. Well, here's everything there is to know about Walt Disney World's urban legend. There are a few variations on the George mythos, but the basics are as follows. George, again, was a construction worker hired to help build the brand new Pirates of the Caribbean attraction at the upcoming Magic Kingdom Park. During the construction, George either fell off or was crushed by a large piece of set, possibly a falling beam, killing him instantly. Some variations of the myth say that the tall windowed tower that can be seen during the well dunking burning city scene is the piece of set that killed George. Some cast members now reportedly refer to this as George's Tower, and it allegedly contains his initials carved onto the base. Supposedly, all attempts to remove the initials are fruitless, and they always reappear, even if painted over. Now, shortly after the theme park opened, a sad-looking older woman would periodically visit the attraction and ask to ride alone. Cast members then reported seeing her speak to nobody and sobbing into her ride boat. As you expect, she was revealed to be George's heartbroken mother. Now, George haunts the Walt Disney World attraction and will make life difficult for cast members and guests, lest they show him the proper respect. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. That's all that George is asking for, Tim.
I guess.
Yeah, he's not a malicious spirit, but he is mischievous. The most famous part of the myth says that cast members have to wish him good morning and farewell, or he breaks down the ride the following day. Apparently, George will even respond to guests if they demonstrate a bad attitude and will punish them for their complaining by messing with the ride. Some say that George has a thing for haunting female guests, too, as there have been reports of women feeling a hand pat their rear or pull their bra strap, as you'd expect. When they turn around, there's nobody there, except for Mickey Mouse. Ha ha! What are you saying? According to some versions of the myth, if the light in George's Tower is switched on during the burning city scene, it means a difficult day is ahead. Another account says that the door behind the iconic prison dog is also related to George's spectral antics. Apparently, if the door isn't shut by cast members, you can expect ghostly happenings and paranormal activity. If both the door is open and the tower light on, well, maybe just head to Disney's Hollywood Studio Park on that day instead, Tim, because that could usher in the end of the world as we know it.
Jeez.
Some reports also say George's curse will lead to other ghostly annoyances for any person dressed in a pirate costume. Cast members have reported seeing ghostly apparitions on the monitors and received phone calls from no one, seemingly all thanks to George, the Pirates of the Caribbean ghost. And, as with any paranormal investigation, concrete evidence to support George's existence pretty much doesn't exist. Numerous cast members who work on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride will tell you about the myth and the Good Morning George routine, but incidents have reportedly decreased substantially since 2005. As such, it seems pretty likely the consistent breakdowns were just a malfunction of the Walt Disney World engineers that were eventually able to be fixed. To throw even more salt water on the curse of the George the Pirate's ghost, there are no reported deaths of a construction worker at the Pirates of the Caribbean. The ride has certainly had its fair share of incidents, but there's nothing to suggest that a worker died during its initial construction in the 1970s. But we do know that there have been deaths, but they refuse to say that they took place there on campus, if you will, Tim. Yeah. How about that?
Interesting.
Yeah. You believe? We had a buddy of ours named Sid.
Yeah.
Who used to work at Universal Studios.
Yep.
And Sid swore by the fact that there's a legend of this ghost that is seen by, now it's the Simpsons ride, but it used to be the Back to the Future ride. And supposedly he heard from many cast members over at Universal that there's video of this little boy's ghost seen getting on and off the rides or walking around where it shouldn't be. And they go in to check and investigate and there's nobody there.
Yeah.
So kind of wild.
Yeah.
Kind of freaky wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's Disney for you, Tim. Disney.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Hi, Dave and Tim. I have another quick story for you that I've been meaning to send in for a long time. 3 years ago, I was visiting family in Chicago and talked them all into going on one of Ursula Bialski's haunted tours. I was anxious to go on her tour after having her talk, hearing her talk on your show. I have the iOvilus app on my phone and would turn it on when we would stop at the various places on the tour. One of the last stops was the Ira Couch Tomb in Lincoln Park. As we stood listening to the tour guide, I happened to look down at my phone and see the word couch pop up on the iOvilus screen. It was followed by the word brass and sacred, which I thought may be reference to the brass plaque on the tomb and the fact that this part of Lincoln Park was a cemetery and therefore sacred ground. Coincidence? Who knows? But I thought it was pretty cool. One more weird thing about it, since I sent my last story to you, I have been racking my brain trying to remember this one. I knew I had one more story but couldn't remember what it was. Then yesterday, on my way to the dentist, I passed a truck belonging to Couch's Pest Control and immediately remembered. Another coincidence? I'd like to think not. That comes from Colleen in Florida. Thank you both. I love your show. Thank you, cool. Colleen.
Yeah.
Very, very sweet of you. All right, Tim, our final story is here.
Okay.
And this, we're going to wrap up with an audio daily double. Aaron Rodgers, Tim, our enemy to the north or east.
To the east, yeah.
To the east, northeast. Up there, over there, around Wisconsin. Aaron Rodgers shares his UFO sighting experience on the Pat McAfee show, which Pat then made available on Twitter. Let's go ahead and hear his encounter with a UFO, Tim.
I just want to know about the alien thing. So everybody tweeted me because you and I share very similar views on a lot of things, it sounds like. Ricky Gervais, The Office, Life, dropping dime socket signs. And by the way, UFOs, I am all in. This was a big story in your life because I get tweeted it probably, 15 times a day. Ask him. What is your UFO experience? This is unbelievable. Every night I go out looking for one. Literally, I'm always like, come on, let me see something. Let me get it on camera. Let's have a night together, you and I.
You gotta call him in. Did you not watch CE5?
What do I got to say? I went Bigfoot hunting, and they told me just to yell as loud as I can. I went Bigfoot hunting with a deaf guy. By the way, Bigfoot hunting is like 90% audio, so going with a deaf guy is a problem. But if you want to tell me how I can call in an alien, I am here for it.
That can't be a real story.
Real story. He was in the hills of Georgia. He had Confederate flags all over him. It was kind of a sketchy situation. We went out into the woods. They had a Bigfoot caller. We didn't see shit or hear a damn thing, and the deaf guy's never heard a thing. Anyways, let's get to the UFOs. Can we please?
There's a documentary called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, I believe. It's about this organization that came out during quarantine that goes out and does these circles where they call in UFOs, and they have video of it and all these different things. Anyway, long before this happened, 15 years ago, and I told the story on the Nerdist podcast with Pete Holmes, comedian friend of mine, but I told a story about how I was in New Jersey with a teammate of mine, Steve Levy, and Steve has been asked to, after I shared this on the podcast 5 years ago or so, he's been asked to verify my story, and thankfully he did.
Steve.
But it was him and his brother at their house in Jersey, and we saw a crazy thing in the sky that filled up most of the vantage point that we had. It was a snowy night. It was orange and moving in the clouds from left to right. And the bizarre part that was attached to it was that after it went out of sight and we were frozen looking at each other wondering what the hell just happened, about 30 seconds after that, we heard fighter jets. And if you've seen a flyover, or you watch Top Gun, or you've been to an air show, you know what that sounds like, the sound of a plane zipping by. It's undeniable. And there were 3 of them that seemed to be chasing whatever this was.
Oh, my God. I'm so jealous.
And after that, I really got into researching that because we had this story that we couldn't explain. It wasn't in the papers the next day. It wasn't in the papers the day after that. That was never really talked about. And so it was just something that I definitely got into and was interested more in, and I've done some research over the years. Had some other interesting experiences as well, but that was probably the most vivid and expansive interaction that never got talked about or explained.
What are those other interesting experiences?
Well, that's for another time, Pat.
So there you go.
even Aaron Rodgers pulls the old, well, I'll tell you that story another time.
Yeah. He's the biggest tease in the NFL. I got to point out what a mark A-Rod is, because even on this podcast, he's wearing a shirt with his own image on it in a Green Bay Packer uniform. Mark.
Well, we wear Darkness Radio shirts, so I can't begrudge him that. Sadly, as we're recording this episode, sad news has just come across my desk.
What's that?
Eddie Van Halen, the legendary guitarist and co-founder of Van Halen, has died after a long battle with throat cancer.
No.
That's what TMZ has learned. Sources directly connected to the rock star tell us he died at St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica Tuesday. His wife Janie was by his side along with his son Wolfgang and Alex, Eddie's brother and drummer. We're told that in the last 72 hours, Eddie's ongoing health battle went massively downhill. Doctors discovered his throat cancer had moved to his brain as well as other organs. As you know, Eddie has been battling cancer for well over a decade. Sources say he's been in and out of the hospital over the past year, including last November for intestinal issues, and recently underwent a round of chemo. Last year, TMZ reported Eddie was flying between the U.S. and Germany for 5 years to get radiation treatment. Though he was a heavy smoker for years, he believed he developed throat cancer from a metal guitar pick he used frequently and would hold it in his mouth more than 20 years ago. Nevertheless, he continued to attend concerts and rehearse music with his son Wolfgang, who, if you didn't know, became Van Halen's bassist back in 2006. Of course, Eddie himself was considered one of the best, most influential guitarists of all time, who first made a name for himself with his solo on Van Halen's Eruption. Eddie formed the classic rock group in Pasadena in 1972 with his brother Alex on drums, Michael Anthony on bass, and David Lee Roth singing. Eddie served as the main songwriter of their self-titled debut in 1978, which launched the group into super rock stardom in the 1980s. So it is very sad news that we have that Eddie Van Halen, legendary rocker and guitarist, has passed away.
Wow.
Yeah. So, a bit of a surprise even to Tim. I got that while we were listening to the Aaron Rodgers story. But that's that. Just another reminder, folks. Hug your loved ones. Make that phone call. Send an email. Reach out to somebody that you've lost touch with in a while, because you just never know when that day is going to come. Thank you all for spending your time here with us. I'm sorry to go out on a bit of a downer note, but we are happy you're here. We're happy to be sharing the strange, wonderful, supernatural world around us with you. Thank you for tuning in and being a part of Darkness Radio. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of your best in paranormal talk radio. I'm Dave, that's Tim. This is Darkness Radio.